Hello friends, it's Allison Vanderslice and thank you for joining me in another video. Today we're going to be making 6 cards that will be using the umbrella punch that I received in a gift from Christmas. I'm also going to be using these Stampin' spots from the different paper pumpkin unboxings that I have done. And I found different pieces of patterned paper that match those Stampin' spots. I'm also going to be cutting off a couple more pieces of the umbrella bottom so that way we can have the little stem to hold the umbrella up. I'm going to be using the ones from the patterned paper, and to make them black, I'm just going to cover them with a black marker. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to hit the record button even though I swore that I did. I am going to be using a green, dark blue, and a light blue for these card bases. I scored them at 4 1/4 and then again at 2 1/8. I then went ahead and then cut them at 5.5 inches. This way I have 6 card bases in total. I'm going to be using this floral stamp from the Stampin' Up! Paper Pumpkin unboxing that I did. And this one is a 2-step stamp. What you saw me holding up was an Octagon die set, and this one has stitches on it, so when you cut it out you'll have a little stitch pattern. I'm just checking to see which one would be best to fit over this floral stamp set. I'm going to pull out my trimmer and then hold the stamp alongside of it to see how big it is. It looked like it's a little bit over 3 inches, so I'm going to cut a couple strips out at 3.5 inches. And then I'll be able to have everything the same size for when I go ahead and use the Stampin' platform in a couple moments. So I went through and found some scraps, some old card bases that I didn't want to use anymore. So I cut those down to the same size, and now I'll bring out my Stampin' platform. I'm now going to bring out my Stampin' Up! Stampin' platform. This way it makes it a little bit easier for me to get my stamps all in the correct position. I might have asked this question before, but what do you prefer? Do you prefer batch making or making a single card at a time? I'm positioning the stamp in the place I would like it on the paper. After that, I'm going to remove it and then put a scrap piece of paper down. This is because I want to do second generation stamping for the base layer and then make the darker layer the second one, which I will just use first generation stamping. So here I am stamping the ink pad down onto the stamp, and then I will transfer it over to my scrap paper, and then I'll replace that scrap paper with my piece I want to use and then stamp again. I'll then go through the same process with the Misty Moonlight again, and I will do the first generation stamping on the scrap piece, and then I'll put it on a new piece of paper for the second generation. If you saw the back of those papers, there was one with elves, and then there was the one with butterflies. That was just a piece of scrapbook paper I wasn't planning on using, and that's what I did all of my stamping on today. I knew that they were going to be covered up with another piece of cardstock, and you couldn't really see through it, so I just went with it. I'm going to clean off my stamp with a baby wipe, put my scrap paper down, and then I'm going to use Rich Razzleberry, again another Stampin' spot from a paper pumpkin box. And then I'm going to do that first generation stamping again, replace the paper, and then I will do a second generation stamping with this one. Again, I'll repeat that process 2 times. And here's the second one of the second generation stamping for the Rich Razzleberry. Again, I'll wipe off the stamp with a baby wipe. Now these inks do stain these stamps, so it's not going to come clean, which is fine. Sometimes, especially with the words, I actually prefer that because it makes it a little bit easier to see. And this next one is Melon Mambo, which is a lighter pink color. So I'll go ahead and do our first generation stamping on this paper and then switch it out for the real piece and do the second generation stamping, and I will do that 2 times as well. So here's the first stamping of the second generation. And this one is the second stamping of the second generation. I'll clean the stamp again with another baby wipe. Actually, it's the same one. And then I'm going to go ahead and put down one of the pieces that we already stamped, so that way we can get the second part of the stamp set going. So this is the second layer that we will do in the darker color. I'm lining it up with the scrap piece of paper just to test to make sure that it is in the right spot. I'm going to put in our real piece now. I'll put ink down on the stamp and then we'll go ahead and close the door, and then we have our first floral piece for our cards today. And I'll do that again with the second piece of the Misty Moonlight, and then repeat that process with the rich Razzleberry and then the Melon Mambo. Now we're going to go through and use the little centerpiece of the flower and go ahead and put that in the middle of each of these flowers. I will start out with the Melon Mambo, and I'm just going to do first generation stamping here for each of them. Each of these will just use the same color of the flower. So the Melon Mambo will be Melon Mambo. The Misty Moonlight will be Misty Moonlight. You get it. In between each of these, I am going to be cleaning off that little stamen area of the flower on that baby wipe again, just so I don't contaminate the ink pads. The next thing we're going to add are leaves, and we will use these 2 green shades that I got off of Amazon, and then also where I got the finger daubers that we'll be using as well. I'm going to put the stamp in the lighter green ink, and then using the dark green on the finger dauber, I will just add that and blend it a little bit. So that way we get a little bit more texture in the leaves. So again, we will stamp down in the light green and then use our finger dauber to add a little bit of texture on one side of the leaf. On this acrylic block, I have the bigger leaf stamp and then the smaller leaf stamp on the other side. So that way I don't have to switch around as much. Again, I'm going to repeat this process on the rest of the 5 floral pieces that we have already stamped. I wasn't feeling the best this day, so I stopped recording to finish the leaf stamping, and here are the rest of them so you can see what they all looked like. I tried to position the leaves in different spots so that way they weren't all the same. Here's a time lapse of me just getting these pieces die cut and ready to go for the card. Now we're going to go through and get ready to cut the card fronts. Now this part is a little bit different than what some might normally do because this is going to be a fun fold, a little bit of a spinner card. I'm going to place the die in the middle of my card front, and then what's going to happen when I lay down my plates is I'm going to sandwich only the first 2 1/8 inches, so only where that fold is. We're going to leave that other half outside of the plate so that way we don't cut that part. I'm going to remove the die, and then you'll see that we only cut half of the card front. I'm going to fold that 2 1/8 piece over to the left, and then we'll have the portion of the die sticking out. We want to make sure that we use our bone folder to make these edges crisp, so that way it lays better and opens better. Here's another look at how the card is going to open. So you see how that little die cut is going to be a little flip in the front of the card, making it a fun fold. And I'm just going to go through a time lapse with the next process of just die cutting through these card fronts so you can see what they look like. Next we have a time lapse of me using that same die to cut out some vellum that I will use for the focal point umbrella on the front of the card. I went through and stamped the greetings for the inside. One came from Amazon and then another one came from a Paper Pumpkin subscription box. I used the same coordinating inks that we saw in the previous stamping segments. I'm going to open up this card with that 2 1/8 inch going across and using my bone folder to crisp the edge. I'm now going to take some of my tear tape and put a little piece towards the top and then towards the bottom. After I remove the adhesive, I'm going to wrap around some of this thread that I got from the Dollar Tree, or as some of you like to call it, the $1.25 store. It's not just $1.25. I got flower pots there, and one of them was $5. I'm going to take that thread and go around about 3 times on the front so you can see it there, and then I will trim off the excess. I'm going to put some of the tear tape on the back of the piece of scrapbook paper that will go on that little edge there. You can make it either like 2 inches or anything smaller than that. This was just a piece that I cut off from where we had punched out from earlier. I'll remove the backing from the adhesive and then adhere it to that card, covering up that tape and excess thread. Now, I didn't realize that it was longer than what it needed to be when I put the adhesive down, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim off the excess with some scissors that I use for sticky substances. So there's the card front. We'll fold back that crease for the fun fold feature, and then you can see the thread there. Now I'm going to take some more of the tear tape and put this onto the greeting that we'll put on the inside. We'll remove the backing, and then we will go ahead and do something a little bit different to make sure that it's centered on the back of the card. I'm going to take the greeting and put it face side up on the front inside of the card where the die cut was. I'm then going to fold the back over, and then there we go. We have it perfectly centered and lined up. No guessing involved. I'm going to then take the flower and go ahead and put more tear tape on the back of it. And here's another view of the scrapbook paper that I reused for stamping today. Now this one I'm going to add more tape since there's going to be some movement involved with it. So it's up to you if you want to do tape or liquid glue, whatever you feel comfortable with. Right now, I'm not removing all of the backing from the tear tape. I'm doing about half of it and folding it over. I saw this from another YouTuber on here called Natasha, and I really enjoyed her card making videos, and I liked this little trick that she does. This way you don't have all the adhesive showing and you can line it up better. Press down on the center where the adhesive was showing all the way, and then you can pull out those little pieces, and then you have it perfectly folded, or excuse me, you have it perfectly lined up where you want it. I'm now getting the pieces ready for the focal point on the card front. There is the vellum piece that I cut out earlier. I'm going to take a glue dot and then I will put it on the top of the little handle for the umbrella, and then I will attach the umbrella to the handle. I'm just going to look at the placement, see how I want it to lie down onto the card front, and then I'm going to use more tear tape on this. I'm just going to do one piece, and then I will do a glue dot on the bottom of the handle just to make sure that it stays down. I'll remove the backing and then put it onto the vellum. To adhere the vellum to the card front, I'm going to use more of the tear tape because sometimes liquid glue can warp the vellum. To adhere it to the card front, I'm going to use 2 pieces of tear tape instead of 1. And then I'll use another glue dot down at the bottom just to give it more reinforcement to make sure that it stays on. I'll remove the backing and then go ahead and adhere to the card front. I'm going to use my bone folder to crisp up those edges again since we've had it open for a little bit. And here we have a view of the card. I really like how you get to see 2 different things when you open it. I'm now going to repeat the process for the remaining of the cards. I'll go through and put the little extras on the inside, either ribbon, thread, and the scrapbook paper. I'll do the greeting in the middle, and then I will put the focal points onto the card fronts. To add a little bit more flair and excitement to the front of the card, I am going to use Sequins, and I'm also going to use fabric paint. So here I'm testing out the silver fabric paint from Arteza or Arteza. I am not exactly sure how you're supposed to say that. For the green cards, I'm going to be using the silver dots, and I'm going to put 3 on each of the card fronts. 2 kind of closer together and then 1 further away. Do you guys like these batch making videos, or do you prefer when I just make 1 card? Because I was contemplating cutting this down and showing you how I only made 1 of them instead of all of them. But since this one's harder, I thought maybe seeing the process more would be better. Oh, I guess I am doing Puffy paint or the fabric paint on one of the dark blue and then one of the light blue cards as well. Excuse me, I misspoke. It wasn't just for the green. Now for these 2, I'm going to use some sequins. Yeah, this was filmed back in the end of April, beginning of May, and it is now the beginning of July, so I kind of forgot what I did. Right now I'm looking for some sequins. Anyway, if you could leave a comment letting me know if you prefer the batch making like this, or if you would rather see shorter videos just showing 1 of them, I would really appreciate it. I really like knowing your feedback and what you enjoy. I like both styles of videos, so I'll probably do both for a while unless I hear otherwise. I do appreciate you watching and taking the time out of your day to support my channel, and I hope that you are getting some inspiration to either create one of these cards or just create something small in general. Alright, now I'm going through with my liquid glue, and I'm going to put down the 3 dots, and I'm just going to put the glue down on both card fronts and kind of let it get tacky. There I should have separated some of those dots a little bit more. And for the dark blue, I'm actually going to put 5 sequins on instead of 3. I'm going to use the putty side of the Take Your Pick tool to pick up the sequins, and then I'll use the pointer side to press down to make sure I don't get glue on the putty. Oh, there was an issue with that sequin. It wasn't laying flat because there was a little extra bit on it. So I just turned it over and used the other side. That's why I was fighting it. And here we have our fun fold flip cards. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video. I hope that you felt inspired to create something today. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you like my content, feel free to subscribe. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Have a great day. Bye.